You ever walk towards something that looks perfect from far away, shiny, promising, almost glowing, and the closer you get, the more something inside you starts scratching at your ribs? Not fear, no. Something quieter. A warning, like a whisper slipping through the cracks of your thoughts, telling you that the sweetness in front of you is just poison dipped in honey. People ignore that whisper. They call it overthinking, nerves, bad timing. But what if it isn't any of that? What if that voice is trying to drag you back from the edge before you step into the jaws waiting for you with a smile? You ever notice how the most dangerous things in life don't walk toward you waving red flags or sirens blaring? No. They come dressed in softness. They come wearing kindness as a mask. They walk right up to you with gentle eyes and warm smiles, like they've been waiting just for you. And that's the trick, isn't it? Because the moment something looks perfectly harmless, that's when you should start looking twice, maybe 3 times, because danger isn't stupid. It doesn't announce itself. It hides behind everything that feels familiar, safe, comforting. It hides behind the things you want so badly that you stop thinking straight the moment they appear. That's the funny thing about traps. They're not built for everyone. They're crafted for you specifically. Tailored, personalized, designed with precision. They know what appeals to you, what weakens you, what opens the door without you realizing you've unlocked it. And so when something feels too perfect, too easy, too convenient, you should feel that little spark in your chest, that uncomfortable pinch, that tug that whispers, "Look again." But people don't. Most people just walk right in, arms wide open, thanking the universe for what looks like a blessing. And the funniest part is that danger knows you won't question it if it comes wrapped in everything you ever wanted. That's why it hides behind harmlessness. Because harmlessness is disarming. It puts your guard to sleep. It makes you slow, soft, distracted. It makes you trust when you should observe. It makes you step forward when you should pause. And that pause, that tiny pause that you ignore, that's the exact moment the warning tries to save you. Because deep down, something in you always knows. Something ancient, instinctive, wired into your bones. A jolt, a whisper, a sudden tightness in your stomach that wasn't there a second ago, but you push it away because the surface looks clean, the surface looks beautiful, the surface looks like the answer you've been begging for, and that's why you don't see the claws hiding beneath it. You see, danger doesn't hide in darkness. That's too obvious, too predictable. It hides in light. It hides in charm. It hides in the person who says all the right words at all the right times. It hides in the job that sounds like a dream but keeps pulling at you in ways you can't explain. It hides in the invitation that feels innocent until it isn't. It hides in the opportunity that arrives too suddenly, too smoothly, without any cracks visible on the surface. And every time something dangerous approaches, it tests you first. It sees how quickly you believe in appearances, how eager you are to trust what flatters you, how willing you are to silence the little voice saying something's off. That voice doesn't shout, it doesn't panic, it just nudges you softly. A feeling, a thought, a flicker. And when you ignore it, the danger smiles, because it knows you've already stepped inside. People think the real threat is the obvious one, the loud one, the one that looks like a storm approaching. But the real threat is the quiet one, the one that blends in, the one that pretends to be your answer, the one that feels like relief when it first arrives. That's the danger you should fear, the one that doesn't look like danger at all. And the moment you mistake comfort for safety, you lose clarity. You forget to ask questions. You forget to observe. You forget to test what's in front of you. You start believing that just because something feels gentle, it must be good. But gentle things can cut the deepest. Soft things can suffocate. Beautiful things can blind you long enough to lead you right into a cage disguised as a warm hug. There's always a moment before the trap snaps shut. A single moment where you could turn around. A single moment where something inside you says, wait. That warning is never random. It's never weak. It's never wrong. But people get so excited by the harmless appearance that they run right past that warning like it's nothing. And then they wonder how things went wrong so fast. You have to learn to look past the softness, past the sweetness, past the surface. You have to learn to study the things that approach you too easily. Because when something dangerous wants you, it doesn't threaten you. It charms you. It comforts you. It blends in. It appears harmless, so you never see the moment it tightens around you. Know what's hilarious? How people think their hesitation is a weakness. Like that shaky moment before they make a choice is some kind of flaw they need to fix. They treat it like a bug in their system, something to patch up, something to silence with confidence quotes and deep breaths. But they never stop to wonder why that hesitation shows up exactly when it does, why it only appears around certain people, certain places, certain decisions, why it rises up suddenly, uninvited, right when they're about to step into something that looks oh so perfect. They don't realize it's not fear, it's not insecurity, it's not overthinking. It's a warning sent from somewhere much higher than their own noisy little minds. There's a difference between fear and a stop signal. Fear screams. Hesitation whispers. Fear shakes your whole body. Hesitation taps once, lightly, like a finger on your shoulder. Fear throws you into chaos. Hesitation brings a strange clarity, like a cold breeze brushing across the back of your neck. And it always happens for a reason. Always. People just pretend it doesn't. They chalk it up to nerves, they call it doubt, they label it unnecessary. But deep inside, they know. They know that feeling isn't random, it isn't imaginary, it isn't coming from the mind, it's coming from beyond it. You ever stand in front of something you thought you wanted, something you prayed for, dreamed about, and suddenly your whole spirit quietly steps back, like it's retreating, like it's pulling itself away from what your eyes can't see yet. Your body moves forward, but your soul refuses to follow. That's not fear, that's protection, that's intervention. That's the universe slapping your hand away from a burning stove that hasn't shown its flames yet. The body knows before the brain does. The spirit knows before the heart catches up. That hesitation you feel, it's the tiny alarm bell that rings before the disaster. The gentle but firm message, stop, look again. But people hate that feeling. They fight it. They drown it out with excitement. They convince themselves they're just being silly. They say things like, I'm just overthinking. No, you're not. Something is trying to save you, and you're arguing with it because you're too distracted by what looks good. Hesitation only comes when something is off, when something doesn't align with your path. When something or someone is hiding a little too much behind a smile, when the timing feels forced, when the energy shifts, when the truth is being covered with decoration, that moment of discomfort, that tiny pause, that sudden breath you didn't expect, that's the warning. But people ignore it because the trap looks shiny, polished, inviting. They step into it thinking they're brave, when in reality they're just blind. You ever wonder why every terrible choice you've ever made had a moment, a single second, where something inside you tried to stop you and you brushed it off? You remember it, don't you? The strange silence, the weird heaviness, the sudden thought that flashed across your mind out of nowhere, the little voice that said, wait, that was the warning, that was the signal. And you didn't listen because you mistook it for doubt instead of divine protection. Hesitation isn't confusion, it's clarity disguised as a pause. It's the universe giving you time, just a flicker of time, to change direction. It doesn't push you, it restrains you. It doesn't scare you, it sobers you. It doesn't demand, it suggests. And that suggestion is powerful. It's the thin line between stepping into a blessing and walking into a beautifully painted trap. But people live fast. They choose fast. They want answers fast. They want outcomes fast. Fast, fast, fast. Like speed will save them from consequences. Speed is the enemy's favorite tool. But hesitation, that's the shield. That's the moment where everything could shift if you just paid attention. But most won't. They're too caught up in what they feel like doing instead of what they're being quietly guided away from. And the most ironic part? Later, when everything falls apart, when the truth finally shows its teeth, when the mask cracks open, people always say the same thing. I had a feeling. Of course you did. You were warned. You just didn't respect the warning because it didn't come loud enough for your liking. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't supernatural. It wasn't a sign in the sky. It was a simple pause in your spirit, a single moment of hesitation that you mistook for weakness instead of the protection. It truly was a funny thing about opportunities. People treat them like they're gifts from heaven just because they show up at a convenient moment. They don't question them. They don't examine them. They don't even slow down long enough to ask themselves, why now? Oh no, they dive in head first, like a child grabbing candy off the floor without checking who dropped it. Because the moment something looks like an opportunity, people assume it must be good. They don't realize that not every open door leads to a better room. Some doors open to staircases that go straight down. Some lead to beautifully decorated cages. Some open just wide enough to make you curious before they slam shut behind you. There's a strange pressure in the world that tells people they must say yes to every chance that comes their way. Don't miss this moment. Don't waste the opportunity. Take it while it's here. And that mindset is exactly why so many walk into traps with smiles on their faces. Because some opportunities aren't blessings. They're bait. They show up dressed like advancement, like progress, like change, when in reality they're designed to pull you into something that drains you, distracts you, or destroys you slowly enough that you don't notice until it's too late. People forget that timing is everything. Real opportunities come aligned with peace, clarity, and a sense of rightness that settles deep in your bones. Fake ones come with excitement that feels like adrenaline rather than assurance. They push you to move fast instead of letting you move wisely. They rush you. They pressure you. They make you fear missing out so you don't think long enough to see what's hiding behind the curtain. Real opportunities don't demand your fear, only traps do. You ever notice how some chances appear exactly when you're tired, when you're lonely, when you're vulnerable, when you're doubting yourself? Ah, yes, that's the perfect moment to be offered something shiny. That's when your defenses are low and your judgment is foggy. That's when something can slip right past your intuition because you're desperate enough to welcome it. People say timing is divine, but they forget timing can also be manipulated. The wrong things show up at the most convenient moments just to catch you off guard. And the funniest part? People think the universe is testing how badly they want something. No, sometimes it's testing how much they've learned, whether they're able to distinguish between what they want and what they need, whether they'll grab the first thing offered or wait for what's actually meant for them, whether they'll fall for the same trick again or finally recognize the pattern. Not every opportunity is meant for you. Some are simply not aligned with your purpose. Some will pull you off your path. Some will bury you under responsibilities that aren't yours. Some will attach you to people who drain the life out of you. Some will take more from you than they ever give back. And yet, they show up smiling, offering you exactly what you thought you lacked: money, love, status, comfort, connection. Perfect bait, perfect disguise, perfect timing to catch someone who thinks every open door is divine approval. There's something unsettling about opportunities that come too easily. They feel light, almost suspiciously light, as if they require nothing from you, yet want everything in return later, and the moment you accept them blindly, you start to notice the small things you ignored at first, the subtle red flags, the hidden motives, the energy shifts, the questions that don't have answers. You start to realize the opportunity wasn't here to grow you, it was here to hook you. People never remember this simple truth. If something truly belongs in your life, it won't need to trick you. It won't need to rush you. It won't need to disguise itself. It won't need to pull you away from your intuition. Real opportunities come with clarity, not confusion. They bring peace, not pressure. They feel aligned, not forced. They come with honesty, not hidden strings. But the wrong opportunities, they come fast. They come flattering. They come sparkling with urgency. They push you to ignore your hesitation and jump before you look. They want you overwhelmed. They want you excited. They want you blind. Because a trap only works when you walk into it willingly believing the whole time that you've just received something special. And by the time you realize it was a setup, you're already inside the cage you mistook for a doorway to something better. Desire is a funny thing. It's loud, impatient, trembling in your hands like a hungry animal that hasn't eaten in days. It makes everything glow a little brighter, sound a little sweeter, look a little more attainable than it actually is. When you want something badly enough, your mind becomes a magician. It starts painting every crack gold, turning every red flag into a harmless little decoration, twisting every warning into some motivational slogan about taking risks. That's how desire blinds you. It convinces you that the thing you want most is harmless simply because you want it. And that's exactly why it becomes the perfect camouflage for a trap. You think the trap looks like danger, chaos, sharp edges, alarms blaring. No. The most effective traps look exactly like your fantasies. They're shaped like your prayers, colored like your cravings, and timed perfectly to show up when you're most vulnerable to wanting. They imitate your dreams so precisely that you don't realize you're walking straight toward a cage disguised as a wish. And desire? It pushes you forward with a grin on its face, whispering, "Go on, this is what you've been waiting for." The problem isn't wanting something. The problem is wanting it so much that you stop questioning it. That's when the trap gets you. When desire becomes louder than intuition, when the craving becomes stronger than the caution, when the longing becomes so overwhelming that you can't hear the quiet voice trying to warn you. Because warnings don't come wrapped in explosions or lightning bolts. They come as soft discomfort, a strange tension, a fleeting thought you brush off because it doesn't match the story you're trying to write. When desire blinds you, you start building excuses for things that don't add up. You justify the inconsistencies. You ignore the way your gut twists. You let the mask fool you because the mask fits the image you had in your head. You want it to be right so badly that you willingly overlook the evidence that something is very wrong. You let yourself fall in love with the illusion instead of facing the truth. And that truth sits right there, waiting, tapping its foot, wondering when you'll finally open your eyes. People think traps only trick the weak. They don't. They trick the desperate. They trick the impatient. They trick the hopeful. They trick the ones who've been waiting too long for something to change. Because when you want something deeply enough, you stop paying attention to what you're stepping into. You rush, you leap, you throw caution off the roof and tell yourself that this time things will be different. And the trap smiles, wide and patient, because it doesn't need to deceive you. It just needs you eager enough to deceive yourself. Desire creates illusions. It paints people into saints when they haven't earned even the label of decent. It turns opportunities into miracles even when they reek of manipulation. It makes you feel chosen when you're actually being targeted. It makes you feel lucky when you're simply being lured. And once you're emotionally invested, once your heart has convinced your mind to shut up, the trap doesn't even have to work anymore. You walk right into it and close the door behind you, thinking you finally found what you were waiting for. And here's the cruelest part. You'll blame yourself later for not seeing it. But the truth is, you did see it. You felt it. Every instinct you had whispered the truth, but desire grabbed those whispers by the throat and told them to shut up. You weren't blind, you closed your own eyes. And you did it because the fantasy was sweeter than the thought of letting go. The possibility was addictive, the dream was comfortable, the hope was intoxicating. So you silenced every warning to keep the fantasy alive. Desire can be dangerous because it teaches you to see what you want instead of what's actually there. It bends the truth. It filters reality. It turns traps into treasures and dangers into opportunities. It tricks you into believing that anything that feels good must be right, even when every sign is pointing in the opposite direction. And once desire takes control, you stop being a thinker and start being a follower of your own illusions, walking into a setup disguised as the answer to your prayers. And the trap waits, patiently, quietly, smiling because it knows you'll come closer. It knows desire will drag you forward like a puppet. It knows you're too captivated to notice the edges sharpening around you, and by the time you finally see the truth, you're already standing inside something that never had the intention to let you walk out you. Ever notice how the sweetest traps never come wrapped in barbed wire or flashing red lights? No. The real traps, the ones that make your pulse stutter and your knees shake, they come dressed in velvet promises. They whisper, not shout. They slide right under your ribs, curl up in your chest, and pretend they've been part of you all along. And the funniest part is, you're convinced you chose them. You reached out, wide-eyed and hungry, and said, yes, this is exactly what I've been waiting for. Isn't it delicious how the mind loves to decorate its own cage and call it destiny? Because the truth is, nobody builds a prison for you that's stronger than the one you design yourself. All those shiny little desires, the ones you chase like fireflies in the dark, they glow just long enough to make you believe they're leading you somewhere important. But they're not. They're bait. They're the cheese. You're the mouse. And the trap? Well, the trap is the story you tell yourself about why you want what you want. You think you're choosing. But really, you're just following a script written by every wound you never healed, every craving you never questioned, every fear you dressed up as ambition. See, it starts small, a little wish, a little hunger, something you convince yourself is harmless. If I just get this, if I just reach there, everything will make sense. But hunger is greedy. It grows, it stretches, it pulls you by the collar, until you stop noticing the ground you're stepping on. You stop noticing the teeth hidden in the path. You stop noticing yourself, and that's when you're most deliciously vulnerable, right when you think you're moving freely, when you're sure you're in control, when the desire itself feels like a compass. But what if the compass was broken? What if it was spinning because of something inside you that you refused to face? And then, one day, a moment, a whisper, a sudden freeze, you see it. You feel that sharp tug in your chest, that strange stillness, that uncomfortable truth crawling up your spine. The realization that none of this was an accident, that the door didn't slam shut because the world hates you. It slammed shut because you walked right into it with your eyes wide open and your hands outstretched. It slammed because the trap was shaped perfectly for you, custom fit to your desires, stitched together with threads you handed over. Oh, and when that realization hits, it's almost beautiful, because it's the moment the whole illusion cracks, the moment the curtain drops, the moment you see that the temptation you were chasing was never meant to guide you, it was meant to expose you, to show you how easily you can be led by your own fantasies. How quickly you can be fooled by the things you think you need. How effortlessly you betray yourself in the name of feeling satisfied for just a second. But there's something strangely liberating about that, isn't there? That flash of clarity, that punch of awareness, that dizzy little gasp when you finally understand that the trap didn't appear out of nowhere. It grew out of the parts of you that you never wanted to question. It came from your impatience, your pride, your hunger to feel important, your need to be seen, loved, validated, understood. All those secret little desires you try to hide under polite smiles and sensible choices. They built the bars, they set the trigger, they polished the bait, and you admired it the whole way in, thinking it was the prize at the end of the path. But that moment when you see what really happened, it does something to you. It shakes you awake in a way no warning ever could, because warnings feel like noise, don't they? But truth feels like a blade dipped in ice, pressed right against the back of your mind. It cuts clean, it cuts deep, and suddenly you're not fooled anymore. Suddenly you can see the trap for what it was, and yourself for the one who walked willingly toward it, smiling, dreaming, hoping, craving. And in that shattered, breathless silence, you finally understand why the voice said stop, why the world felt wrong for a moment, why the air grew heavy, why everything inside you screamed without making a sound. It wasn't trying to scare you. It wasn't trying to punish you. It was trying to pull you out of the web you spun with your own desires before it snapped shut around your neck. Funny thing about warnings, they never arrive with trumpets or fireworks or a dramatic spotlight pointing straight at your face. No, they sneak in quietly, slithering between the cracks of your thoughts, gently tapping on the edges of your awareness like a faint knock on a door you pretend you don't hear. Because warnings aren't meant to dazzle you, they're meant to disturb you, and people don't like being disturbed. They prefer comfort even if it's killing them softly. They prefer the warm glow of denial to the cold sting of truth. So when a warning shows up wearing its crooked little grin, whispering stop, you brush it away like dust on your sleeve. You don't even realize you're brushing away your own salvation. It's amusing, truly, how predictable humans can be. They see a sign that says danger, and instead of pausing, they tilt their heads, smile, and say, I wonder what's behind it, as if danger is some sort of treasure chest waiting to reward them for their bravery. They convince themselves the warning applies to someone else, someone weaker, someone less clever, someone without their magnificent sense of control. They tell themselves they're not being reckless, oh no, they're being bold, adventurous, chosen even. Isn't that adorable? That sweet little fantasy of invincibility, that heroic delusion that nothing bad could possibly happen because they believe they were meant for something grand. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor. It hands you warnings like gifts, softly, politely, repeatedly, until you throw them aside. And once you do, once you've confidently turned your back, that same quiet universe becomes very, very patient. It watches, it waits, it lets you stroll deeper into the shadows, humming a tune, oblivious to the teeth closing in around you, because warnings aren't meant to force you to turn around. They're meant to give you the choice. And choice, that's where the real madness begins. You ignore the whisper. Then the nudge, then the uneasy feeling in your gut, then that strange moment when the world seems to hold its breath and everything in you tenses for no logical reason. All those tiny, inconvenient alerts you tell yourself you're too busy to acknowledge. You convince yourself they're nothing, coincidence, imagination, noise. You push forward, determined, brave, or maybe just desperate to prove you're right. But every step you take after ignoring that warning becomes part of a lesson being carved into your fate with invisible ink. Then comes the shift. That subtle, dreadful shift when the warning you ignored begins to bloom into something else. Something heavier, something louder, something impossible to escape. You start noticing the pattern you once dismissed. The consequences growing legs and crawling toward you. The doors that once swung open now slammed shut. The path you thought was yours suddenly twisting into unfamiliar nightmares, and deep inside you, that buried memory of the warning, the one you pretended not to hear, starts laughing. Because the thing about warnings is, if you don't listen to them, they don't disappear, they transform. The ignored warning becomes the lesson, the unavoidable lesson, the one that grabs you by the collar and drags you through the very thing you believed you were strong enough to outrun. A lesson that doesn't funny, isn't it? How the most dangerous moment in a person's life isn't the fall, it's the step right before it. That twitchy, trembling moment when your instincts are yanking you in one direction, whispering, go, 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 like a frantic crowd cheering you toward the edge of a cliff, while something quieter, something older, wiser, invisible, simply puts a hand on your shoulder and murmurs, stop. But humans don't like quiet things. They like noise. They like momentum. They like the illusion of progress, even if the path they're sprinting down is an open-mouthed trap waiting to snap. There's a specific kind of madness that happens at a crossroads like that, the kind where your pulse speeds up, your thoughts get fuzzy, and you keep convincing yourself you're making the right choice simply because slowing down feels uncomfortable. People don't actually search for truth, they search for whatever makes the fear go away. So if moving forward numbs the anxiety, they'll move, even if every sign, every instinct, every shiver in their bones is begging them to freeze. But that's the trick, isn't it? That's the game. Your instincts don't operate on logic. They operate on whispers. They tug at you with feelings you can't put into words. And people don't like feelings they can't explain. They want charts, facts, applause, permission. They want someone to pat their head and say, yes, go ahead, this is safe. They'll trust a stranger's opinion before trusting the warning carved into the electricity running through their own veins. They'll ignore that tightening in their chest because it feels too mysterious, too vague, too inconvenient. Then comes the higher voice. That strange, heavy presence that doesn't shout, doesn't panic, doesn't argue. It just says, stop. No explanation, no details, no grand vision of what happens next. Just a single solid command. And because there's no drama in it, people dismiss it. Because it doesn't wave its arms or scream like the rest of the world, it feels insignificant. But that's the problem with subtle things. They only feel small until they're the only thing that could have saved you. Imagine standing at that crossroads. One path looks exciting, glittering, full of promises your cravings adore. Another path looks boring, plain, uneventful, nothing to feed your ego, nothing to make your heart race. And right in the middle, there you are, feeling torn in two. The loud part of you wants the sparkle, the chaos, the thrill, the quiet part. Just wants you alive, wants you sane, wants you safe. But you don't realize the quiet part is the only one that sees the full picture. People think danger shows up with sirens blaring, red lights flashing. But real danger, the kind that wrecks a life quietly, it shows up disguised as opportunity, as love, as excitement, as something you think you need. That's why the crossroads is so dangerous. Because most people don't recognize the trap until they're ankle deep in it, trying to laugh their way through the pain. And when that higher voice says stop, it's not trying to ruin your moment. It's not trying to take away your chance. It's trying to pull you back from a fire that hasn't reached your skin yet. But humans push forward anyway. They think they're being brave. They think they're proving themselves. They think hesitation makes them weak. So they ignore the warning, take the step, and only then realize the spark they chased was actually the flame that would consume them. That crossroads, that tiny quiet second where the world seems to hold its breath, that is where destinies are made or destroyed. And the cruel thing about it, you only recognize which one you chose after it's too late to turn back. You ever notice how the most harmless things are the ones that ruin people the fastest? Oh, they never fall for the big, obvious temptations. Those are too loud, too bright, too sharp around the edges. No, The real traps are soft, subtle, wrapped in charm, dipped in sweetness, dressed like some innocent little moment that couldn't possibly hurt you. That's why people step into them so easily. They're not scared of what looks harmless. They're scared of what looks dangerous. Funny how that works, isn't it? Curiosity. Now that's a slippery creature. It whispers in your ear like a mischievous friend telling you, go on, just a peek, just a little step. What's the worst